In addition, with a warmer Earth due to climate change, we're going to see more mosquitoes and ticks that bring about diseases to new places they've never been before. And we'll see an increase in health-related issues such as asthma and allergies. And the blanket of pollution surrounding the Earth makes our lungs far more susceptible to infections like COVID-19. In fact, when it comes to COVID-19, air pollution is a death multiplier, increasing fatalities by 15% according to really new research from Harvard University. And this all means that these continued crises need to be treated as connected issues, and further, I think, puts the urgency of dealing with the green transformation and tackling climate change front and centre at what we need to focus on in the future.
What is the best case scenario of the economy in, let's say, 5-10 years? And what is also the worst case scenario? Because we are already seeing some countries loosening up on environmental regulation, or at least proposing it in order to do this. And also, as you mentioned, supporting some of these very non-green industries in response to the crisis.
I think, of course, we're not going to find every government, every business, every investor responding in the way that we want to. But one of the reasons that I feel optimistic is because I think that in the engagements and discussions that we're having, we're finding that governments are engaged in the discussion, both thinking about sustainability from an immediate issue, but also in the longer term. So, the EU has come out to talk about how it will and needs to align the stimulus packages to its EU Green New Deal. And other countries, South Korea's come out to talk about these things, many others aren't. Those countries who weren't really doing a lot on these issues, of course, will, find excuses and for delaying their action, and we need to keep the pressure on. Is that all of the figures are showing that, this is kind of short term, but the funds that are doing better at the moment are those that are ESG funds, those that consider ESG factors. And I think we'll find that the businesses that survive are those with very good governance and very, really take ESG factors into consideration and built them deeply into their process. I think we're already seeing some of that, and I think that's what's also driving more of the conversation about sustainability.
It's hugely important to understand how the green stimulus might be targeted, as it will impact the competitiveness of different segments of the industry. Would you agree to that?
Absolutely, and I was talking about that before. This is where I think we need to, make sure that when we need to create jobs and stimulate the economy, we need to do that by sustainable infrastructure projects. We need to do that through jobs that are going to aid the transition to a low carbon economy. So the jobs need to be created in renewable energy, clean energy, new technologies that will help the transition. That's where we need to be focusing our efforts. We know that there's going to be a lot of people are unemployed. It's going to be interesting to see in many countries how many the businesses are able to reopen.
Do you see, in terms of renewables, let's say solar panels, windmills, some of these major investments, are you seeing that people are having a hard time attracting capital for that these weeks?
Now, this is engaging with the 100 largest emitters in the world. So many of them who are in the oil and gas sector, in automotive sector, heavy transport, all of those sorts of heavy airlines, etc., heavy emitting industries. And what we're seeing there is that those engagements are still happening despite COVID-19 and despite what's happening with the oil price. People still, those big businesses still understand the realities of what's happening with the transition to a low carbon economy, and they're still making plans. As I said, we've seen in recent weeks Shell come out with announcements about, you know, by 2050 at the latest, which is, you know, the target that we all have to use, transforming their whole business, including Scope 3 emissions. We've seen Total do something similar. So, you know, these companies wouldn't be doing that if they didn't understand what the long term was going to look like, and that, you know, really this is an inevitable agenda. It's just continuing to gain momentum, and it's not going backwards. We're not going back to a fossil fuel driven world. It's just not going to happen.
You talk about a coordinated whole economy response is possible, which is of course very encouraging. What type of leadership does this require?
So PRI with UNEP 5 formed the Asset Owner Alliance, which is a group of asset owners who aren't just asking companies to commit to a net zero target by 2050. They have committed themselves to net zero by 2050 across their entire portfolio. And investors are still continuing this work, because it's one thing to say, I've got a 2050 target. Well, you and me probably, and many of the people making these commitments, are not going to be in our jobs in 2050. So who's going to be held accountable? So what we're working on at the moment with investors is, how do you set those short-term targets? What do they look like? How do you get there? And what's the reporting mechanisms? And that's some work that's continuing at the moment for the investment community.
What is your reflection on this crisis? In a way, is it a bit of an acid test for the field of sustainability, ESG, responsible investment, and in that it is an opportunity or a must to really maybe reflect and maybe reconsider what really matters in this space?
I think it absolutely is. I think that it's a wake-up call. It's the wake-up call that the world needs. As I said, I think it's making sure that people understand, and this is a very stark reminder, that you cannot have, if you don't have healthy people, if you don't have a healthy planet, you will not have a healthy economy.